Watch out, bub. Good evening. We're going to start out with a couple songs. We're going to sing This Little Light of Mine first. Oh, no, come on up. Come on up. All right. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Oh yeah. Hide it under a bushel. No! I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel. No! I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel. No! I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Oh yeah. Don't let Satan it out. I'm gonna let it shine. Don't let Satan it out. I'm gonna let it shine. Don't let Satan it out. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Oh yeah. Let it shine till Jesus comes. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine till Jesus comes. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine till Jesus comes. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Oh yeah. Good job. I can go to Papa. Papa. Here you go. Shoop, shoop, shoop. All right. We're going to sing Blue Skies and Rainbows. Blue skies and rainbows and sunbeams from heaven are all I can see. When my Lord is living in me, I know that Jesus is well and alive today. He makes his home in my heart.
Down in my heart.
Nevermore will I be all alone, since he promised me that we never would part. Green grass and flowers all blooming in springtime, my works of the Master I live for each day. I know that Jesus is well and alive today. He makes his home in my heart.
Down in my heart.
Nevermore will I be all alone, since he promised me that we never would part. Tall mountains, green valleys, the beauty surrounds me, all makes me aware of the one who made it all. I know that Jesus is well and alive today. He makes his home in my heart.
Down in my heart.
Nevermore will I be all alone, since he promised me that we never would part. All right, we're going to sing Blind Man, and then we got time for one request. So think about what you want to sing. Blind man sat by the road and he cried. The blind man sat by the road and he cried. The blind man sat by the road and he cried. He cried, oh, show me the way. Show me the truth. Show me the light.
The woman sat by the well and she cried. The woman sat by the well and she cried. She cried, oh, 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 show me the way. Show me the truth. Show me the light and the he died. Jesus hung on the cross and he died. Jesus hung on the cross and he died. He cried, oh, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life, and the way to go home. Jesus rose from the dead and he cried. Jesus rose from the dead and he cried. My Jesus rose from the dead and he cried, oh, oh, show them the way, show them the truth, show them the life, and the way to go home.
Right. What did we want to sing? Every move I make. Quick on the draw. Thanks. Go. Every move I make in you. You make me move, Jesus. Every breath I take, I breathe in you. Every step I take in you. You are my way, Jesus. Every breath I take, I breathe in you. Waves of mercy, waves of grace. Everywhere I look, I see your face. Your love has captured me. Oh my God, this love, how can it be? How can it be? Every move I make in you. You make me move, Jesus. Every breath I take, I breathe in you. Every step I take in you. You are my way, Jesus. Every breath I take, I breathe in you. Waves of mercy, waves of grace. Everywhere I look, I see your face. Your love has captured me. Oh my God, this love, how can it be? How can it be? You'll be seated.
Hello. Filling in for Leslie this evening. How's everyone doing? Good, good. Okay, couple announcements, prayer requests. Carmen Nix, her procedure today went really well. She is home resting, so please just keep praying for her. Thomas Matthias, David Watson, and then Jenny Richards had to go into the hospital today, so if you'll please be praying for her. The TNT group is meeting Thursday mornings at 10 a.m. here at the church building for our active retired folks. Please check the lost and found. Things will be getting donated soon, so if you forgot something or forgot that you lost something, go check it out. I don't think Mallory is here, but she got baptized Sunday afternoon, which is awesome. If you see her, tell her congrats. Our Women's Fellowship mornings will be restarting in August, so if you want to be a part of that, please see me or Leslie. The family group Sunday afternoons is having their taco lunch this Sunday after church. And then lastly, Asia and Jorana are throwing a graduation party July 29th, next Thursday, and are inviting the entire church to celebrate. It is imperative that you RSVP by this Friday via Facebook for food purposes. The event is posted on the Crossway Church page. If you're not on Facebook, please see Asia or Jorana. Jorana is here this evening about getting an e-vite invitation instead. Also, if you can help by bringing a dessert or a drink, please let them know that as well. Yeah. Any other announcements? Mitch? Friday night. Oh, Friday night, campus students, we are continuing our mock studies at Casa de Lavenders at 7 p.m.? 7:30. You said 7, I think you said 7:30. Any other announcements? Any birthdays? Okay, Bonnie. Oh, okay. It was on Monday? Okay, and your name? Bonnie. Do you want to say how old you are? 66. Bonnie's 66. Sharon was 69 yesterday. And sir? No, okay. We have Bonnie, Sherry, and Ron. Cameron, you want to start? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Bonnie, Sherry, Ron. Happy birthday to you. Woo. All right. Any anniversaries? Nope. All right, children can go back to their classes. We'll have a brief little fellowship break. And then John? Yes. Someone's teaching.
Okay, how about now? Yeah, that works. All right, so if you happen to read the text for this week, you realize we have a lot of stuff to cover. So we're going to go ahead and begin. But as always, I like to try to do some things before we start. So, highs and lows, gentlemen and ladies. Highs being, what was the high point of your week so far? What are the good things that have happened to you? What are the things that are good around you maybe? And then we'll talk about the lows too, kind of what are the low points that you've dealt with. So Bonnie, high point?
Hearing a birthday wish from a girlfriend I've had since kindergarten.
Okay. So a long-time friend.
Yes. And the low was my neighbor behind me got taken to the ER.
Oh, and so the low was an emergency visit for your neighbor. All right. Let's break them into two sections too. So let's do the highs first.
Okay.
So highs, anybody else? Rick?
Spent some time with some folks this week, yesterday and today, and it's just been really encouraging and just enjoyed the time.
Good. It's always good to just kind of hang out with people and have fun. Devin and then Bryce. I wasn't going to say he was my favorite son, but now since you brought it up, Devin.
Well, it's been mentioned already tonight, but Mallory got baptized Sunday. That's definitely the time of year so far.
And if you're still confused, because some people have been, Mallory is dating Devin, not Bryce. Has been a little bit of a confusion, so just to make it. Bryce.
I got to sleep after the lock-in.
Yes. For those that don't know, Bryce went to a week-long Bible camp from Sunday through basically Friday morning, went back, slept for a few hours, then drove here and was at the lock-in all night long.
I slept for 21 hours after.
Yes, he did sleep. So, over here.
We had some friends over Sunday afternoon that we hadn't been able to spend time with in like 6 months. So we did.
Wow, that's great. Again, friends are awesome. Anybody else have anything? We'll take two more or so. Josh?
I was out at the crack of dawn walking and ran into her sister.
Wow. That is awesome.
I didn't run into her, she just walked with me.
Because you won't really run into me at the crack of dawn. Anybody else? Sharon?
Holding my newest grandbaby and watching him smile.
Oh, that is fun.
And also, Sharon and I put together a cabinet together and didn't get a divorce.
Man, that is great too. I can understand the Wesley thing though. I enjoy holding him myself. My shop got new fans today. They've been putting them in the last couple of days. That and an ice maker. So we're like big town in Tallahassee right now. I mean, it instantly cooled the shop down. So lows of the week. What are some lows that you would want to share? Josh.
It's a combination of low, high, but I discovered an area of my life that has been the cause of many problems, but now it's getting dealt with.
Okay.
So
All right.
it's been an awesome growth moment.
They are awesome growth moments. There are times in our lives when we got to kind of confront those things that are our weaknesses, maybe the things that we fear, and it's a challenge, but when we get past it, things would go a lot better. Anybody else?
John, just
Peggy.
receiving the news this afternoon about the terminal illness that our beloved Coach Biden is facing.
Okay.
He is such a tower of strength for so many people and loved by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
Yeah. Probably more of the hundreds of thousands. But yes, it's a difficult thing, and it's I guess one of the positives to come out of it is to watch how he faithfully deals with this terminal illness. And that's an important thing in life. Anything else? Lows? Sharon?
Dealing with like the contractors that are doing some renovation on our house, it's just very difficult at times communicating with them. I feel like God is giving us both these opportunities to learn how to have, for lack of a better word, confrontational type
Yeah.
conversations with trying to do it the right way, but trying to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's hard.
That is very hard. Anybody else? Troy?
This is what I call low, more so like growing opportunity. But at my accounting firm, there is this business very difficult. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm down. I'm just gonna go to my partner. And we're gonna tackle this. And it was very straightforward, but realized like perseverance and just learning, some things you just can't put off, but at least trying. So I think that kind of taught me, okay, just stepping out in faith and at least trying.
Okay.
Too, and he was able to balance it, and everything worked out. So
Good. All right. So, as a community, we like to share good times. And the reality is we all like to share good things. And so what I'm hoping over the weeks I'll begin to see is more and more people being willing to kind of open up and share. This is a bad thing that happened to me this week. Because it's in those bad moments that we have an opportunity to lift you up, to encourage you, to pray for you. And if you keep those things kind of hidden, the rest of us don't get to see it and don't get to run to your side is ideally what we'd love to try to do. Jenny and I got to have a great meal last night, or 2 nights ago, with a few. Well, yes, I know what their names are. I wasn't quite sure if they wanted me to say what their names were, but with Josh and Thomas, got to know them a little bit better and enjoyed some tacos and things. So, again, I'll throw that plug out there. Jenny and I, El Jalisco, Monday nights, would love to sit around a meal, get to know you a little bit better if we don't know you. If we do know you, we'd still like to have a meal with you. So you are welcome to walk up to one of us and say, hey, I'd like to get together with you this Monday. But so tonight's lesson, we're diving into Stephen. We're not going to quite pick up where we left off last week because I wanted to kind of more back into it through the speech. But here's the problem. The speech is a difficult text to prepare for without knowing the people well that you are preparing to teach it for or to. And so in that, I'm going to ask a few questions just to kind of get an overview until I can learn more about your story at El Jalisco's. So, if you have been a Christian 10 years or longer, raise your hand. Okay. It's a good amount in the room. Those 5 to 10 years? Okay. Those under 5 years? All right, good. Okay, so those of you who would say you are proficient with the Old Testament, raise your hand. And by proficient, let's define it as you know the majority of the stories, you know kind of how to find your way around them, those kind of things. Okay, so yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. We don't necessarily know our ways around it. So tonight we're going to use community interpretation time to kind of flesh some things out. In the end, the last few minutes of class, I'm going to kind of pull us back together, and I'm going to ask you really to come together with some questions that you have of the text. And then next week, I'm going to kind of enter those and wrap up the beginning and the ends. So where we're at, Acts chapter 6, where we left off at last week, Chris kind of brought it to that point of here we have a church. It all depends on resources that you read. Chris's resources had said that by this point, they were probably about 5 years in. The stuff that I'm reading says 3 to 4 years in, so not a big difference there. But what you have is this idea of this being a relatively young church. But they're moving, and they're moving quickly. And what Acts continues to tell us, Luke says as we go through this, is they're growing in number daily, day by day. Okay? And so, as you can imagine, there's a tension that is beginning to go on in this community. They are primarily still in Jerusalem. And in Jerusalem, you have this temple that is the house of God. And it is the temple that was given to the Jews. And the Jews had Pharisees and Sadducees who were teachers of the law who came out and said, this is what the law means to you. And so this is what you're going to follow. And if you broke those rules, they actually had a court that could hold you accountable to those things. Now, again, I'm not sure if it was this last Wednesday or maybe in a sermon recently, Chris mentioned the idea that the Jews could not have you any kind of capital punishment. For that to happen, they had to go to the Romans. Okay, so they could whip you, they could do all kinds of things, but they could not murder you without going to the Romans, basically. Now, with Stephen here, that's kind of an interesting story because they do that, and it doesn't seem like they have Roman approval. So we're not quite sure what happened there, but there's something that happened. Okay, so in this story of Acts, especially if you're reading along with us and maybe kind of keeping a few chapters ahead, what you're noticing is a tension that's beginning to go and happen. Because at first, the Jews were like, it's just another group of people claiming that they have a Messiah. They're just going to die out. In fact, a few weeks back, I think Mitch hit on that section where basically they stood up and said, listen, if this is, no big deal, if this is not from God, basically it's going to fail. So let's just let it go and see what it does. But if it is from God and we get in the way of it, we're in trouble. And so they've kind of taken that philosophy, but as we've read through the last few chapters, we realize that there's this tension going on because they're seeing this group grow and their numbers diminish. And Jenny and I both today tried to think of a way to best contemporize. Is that right? Contemporize? Sounds good. I made it up. It's great. Hashtag it in today's class. This message or this concept of what it meant to the Jews for that day and time to see this happening. And I couldn't really come up with a good way to kind of compare it to in today's society. But for the Jewish person, they were God's chosen people. They were the vessels that carried God's chosen message. They were the keepers of the temple. They were the ones who had the direct access to God, and God required them to do things. And they were in that relationship with Him. And so in that, they now have this other group who is claiming, yes, we're Jewish, but we believe the Messiah has come. And for a Jew who does not believe the Messiah has come, they see it as exactly what they end up accusing Stephen of. This is blasphemy. You're saying the Son of God came to earth, and we don't believe that. We don't believe Jesus was the Son of God. And so you are blaspheming God's name by calling this charlatan the Son of God. And so this tension is building as we're getting to this point. And what we're going to see in the rest of this section of Acts 6 through Acts 7 is this tension has finally come to a head. Those who are in the ruling parties of Jerusalem have decided we're done with this Christian group. We are absolutely done. We realize that they are pulling more people away from the true way to God, and we're going to put a stop to it. And so Stephen is the first. And at the end of this, one of the things that we see is the introduction of Paul. Paul's the one holding the coats of those men who are stoning Stephen. And he's giving his approval is what is told to us. And then picking up the next few chapters, what we're going to see is Paul actively going out into the communities around Jerusalem with letters from the temple that is basically saying, I'm here to put to death any of the people from the way that we find. Okay? So what are we going to do tonight? I'm going to read the speech. It is 53 verses long. Halfway through, you might start nodding. If that's okay, I'll give a big loud wake-up call at the end. But then what we're going to do is we're going to break into groups and start talking about it. Here's what I want you to do. We're going to kind of do an exercise. I've mentioned this to some of you before, at least the parents. I did youth ministry full-time for over 10 years. Since then, I have continued to work with youth. I worked with youth before I did it full time. And in all of that, as I look back over those times, what I realize is what I didn't do the most that I should have done is teach kids how to really be able to read and interpret the Bible on their own. And so part of what we're going to do tonight is give you that kind of tool. The way that you've got on your note sheet there is kind of an inductive Bible study. And so as I read through this, one of the things I want you to do is I want you just to kind of write down the key people or places that are mentioned in this passage. But along with that, any kind of themes or words that you see jumping out at you or are used multiple times over and over again. Okay? And that'll kind of give you a basis of what's being said. Devin, would you grab Bonnie a note sheet real quick? Does anybody else not have a note sheet? All right, Devin, would you grab one? Well, no, they're on the back counter there. There's about 3 or 4 people that need them. All right, so while he's getting those out to you, keep your hands up if you need it. I'm going to go ahead and start reading this passage. So, then the high priest asked Stephen, "Are these charges true?" To this he replied, "Brothers and fathers, listen to me. The God of glory appeared to our father Abraham while he was still in Mesopotamia, before he lived in Haran. 'Leave your country and your people,' God said, 'and go to the land I will show you.' So he left the land of the Chaldeans and settled in Haran. After the death of his father, God sent him to this land where you are now living. He gave him no inheritance here, not even enough ground to set his foot on, but God promised him that he and his descendants after him would possess the land, even though at that time Abraham had no child. God spoke to him in this way, 'For 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and they will be enslaved and mistreated. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves,' God said, 'and afterwards they will come out of that country and worship me in this place.' Then he gave Abraham the covenant of circumcision, and Abraham became the father of Isaac, and circumcised him 8 days after his birth. Later, Isaac became the father of Jacob, and Jacob became the father of the 12 patriarchs. Because the patriarchs were jealous of Joseph, they sold him as a slave into Egypt, but God was with him. And he rescued him from all his troubles. He gave Joseph wisdom and enabled him to gain the goodwill of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. So Pharaoh made him ruler over Egypt and all his palace. Then a famine struck all Egypt and Canaan, bringing great suffering, and our ancestors could not find food. When Jacob heard that there was grain in Egypt, he sent our forefathers on their first visit. On their second visit, Joseph told his brothers who he was, and Pharaoh learned about Joseph's family. After this, Joseph sent for his father Jacob and his whole family, 75 in all. Then Jacob went down to Egypt, where he and our ancestors died. Their bodies were brought back to Shechem and placed in a tomb that Abraham had bought from the sons of Hamor at Shechem for a certain sum of money. As the time drew near for God to fulfill his promise to Abraham, the number of our people in Egypt had greatly increased. Then a new king, to whom Joseph meant nothing, came to power in Egypt. He dealt treacherously with our people and oppressed our ancestors by forcing them to throw out their newborn babies so that they would die. At that time, Moses was born, and he was no ordinary child. For 3 months, he was cared for by his family. When he was placed outside, Pharaoh's daughter took him and brought him up as her own son. Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was powerful in speech and action. When Moses was 40 years old, he decided to visit his own people, the Israelites. He saw one of them being mistreated by an Egyptian, so he went to his defense and avenged him by killing the Egyptian. Moses thought that his own people would realize that God was using him to rescue them, but they did not. The next day, Moses came upon 2 Israelites who were fighting. He tried to reconcile them by saying, "Men, you are brothers. Why do you want to hurt each other?" But the man who was mistreating the other pushed Moses aside and said, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday?" When Moses heard this, he fled to Midian, where he settled as a foreigner and had 2 sons. After 40 years, say, "I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Moses trembled with fear and did not dare to look. Then the Lord said to him, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. I have indeed seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their groaning and have come down to set them free. Now come, I will send you back to Egypt." This is the same Moses they had rejected with the words, "Who made you ruler and judge?" He was sent to be the ruler and deliverer by God himself, though the angel who appeared to him in the bush. He led them out of Egypt and performed wonders and signs in Egypt, at the Red Sea, and for 40 years in the wilderness. This is the Moses who told the Israelites, "God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your own people." He was in the assembly in the wilderness with the angel who spoke to him on Mount Sinai, and with our ancestors, and he received living words to pass on to us. But our ancestors refused to obey him. Instead, they rejected him, and in their hearts turned back to Egypt. They told Aaron, "Make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow, Moses, who led us out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." That was the time they made an idol in the form of a calf. They brought sacrifices to it and reveled in what their own hands had made. But God turned away from them and gave them over to the worship of the sun, moon, and stars. This agrees with what is written in the book of the prophets. "Did you bring me sacrifices and offerings? 40 years in the wilderness, people of Israel. You have taken up the tabernacle of Moloch and the stars of your god Rephan, the idols you made to worship. Therefore, I will send you into exile beyond Babylon." Our ancestors had the tabernacle of covenant, law, with them in the wilderness. It had been made as God directed Moses according to the pattern he had seen. After receiving the tabernacle, our ancestors under Joshua brought it with them when they took the land from the nations God drove out before them. It remained in the land until the time of David, who enjoyed God's favor and asked that he might provide a dwelling place for the God of Jacob. But it was Solomon who built a house for him. However, the Most High does not live in houses made by human hands. As the prophet says, "Heaven is my throne and the earth is my footstool. What kind of house will you build for me, says the Lord, or where will my resting place be? Has not my hand made all these things? You stiff-necked people, your hearts and ears are still uncircumcised. You are just like your ancestors. You always resist the Holy Spirit. Was there ever a prophet your ancestors did not persecute? They even killed those who predicted the coming of the righteous one. And now you have betrayed and murdered him. You who have received the law that was given through angels, but have not obeyed it." So, I have to confess, in my younger years, this was one of those parts of the Bible that I looked at kind of like genealogies, and I read through as quickly as I could to get to the other side. Part of that is probably because my mom likes to say that I have been born and raised in the church ever since I was like a week old. That is something to her credit, and something that she likes to make sure people know. But I had heard all these stories growing up. And in some ways, I think probably I reacted to it in some ways that the Sadducees and Pharisees did as Stephen was giving this defense. See, Stephen was, under law, allowed to give a defense. It was kind of open season. As long as he wasn't blaspheming against God or anything like that during his defense, he was allowed to give his defense the way he wanted to. And so what we have here is his defense. And I will tell you right before we break into groups that what is big about this speech, when you really grasp it, is that what he shows them through this history is that time and time again, God came to them and said, you are my people. I love you. This is what I'm asking of you. And time again, they rejected him. Even to the point that they killed many of the prophets that he sent. Now, I'm sure if I ask for a show of hands, we all here know what rejection feels like. And what this section shows us is not only that we have rejected God, but that over and over again, God has remained faithful to us as we continue to reject him. Okay? It is one that a prophet uses later to talk about Hosea and Gomer and her unfaithfulness. And so in the same sense, this is what Stephen is laying out for them. It is in essence kind of a Hosea and Gomer story, but it is more about God and his people. God loves you. He wants to be with you. And you continue to reject him. And as you continue to reject him, he continues to be faithful to you. And it's a cycle that has gone on and on to the point of them even killing the Savior. So that's Stephen's speech. Here's what I want you to do now. I want you to go ahead and break into groups. I would like them mixed. We have some high school and middle school students in here tonight with us. We have some older folks. We have some college students. We have some younger and older families. Let's kind of get together. Let's try to keep the groups probably under 8. But get together and have somebody kind of pick up as the leader of the group and walk you through the questions. In about 15 minutes or so, we'll get back together for a few minutes and kind of walk through it. So, ready, go. Testing 1, 2. I may have turned the pack off. No, pack's on, so we're good. All right, take 2 more minutes and wrap up your thoughts, and then we're going to get back together and kind of talk for a few minutes.
Dude, I didn't see that coming on. Did you pick the right Judas?
Did I pick the right Judas? Oh, I did.
I didn't see that coming at all. I forgot Judas even existed.
Really?
They introduced Judas
No.
at the end of the second season.
I from the beginning was like, yeah, it's him.
Yeah.
1 more minute. Okay, so let's all come back together. Here's what I'm interested in. As you were going through and answering these questions, was it relatively easy for you, or did you have some difficulties in trying to answer them? Yeah, difficulties. Okay, so did you find that the difficulties were more about your lack of knowledge of these things, or maybe I just didn't write the questions right?
That's what it is.
That's what it is, right? Okay. Mitch. Okay. Josh.
Yeah, I was kind of writing off the fact of what he said. When you slow down, you actually look at it, you're able to focus, and then a whole bunch of stuff kind of opens up to you. So
Okay.
focus needs more focus.
Okay. Anybody else? Kind of your feedback on how you felt about this passage. Does it make a lot of sense to you? Do you need some help?
Yeah, I don't know. I felt like it made a lot of sense, but it's because like I'm new to the Old Testament a little bit, so it kind of
Okay.
I think that's part of it.
Okay. And in a room this large of people, you would have those that have a lot of knowledge on these kind of things, those that have little knowledge, and then in between. Question-wise, what are things that you would like me to answer as we head into next week?
I'm going to take a question because, I started out saying, why 57 lines of defense? My first defense, okay, practically speaking, someone says you were doing something, it may be 3 words or 4 words, or going straight to line 51. Skip the whole 50, or if you're going to say, I would have skipped the whole thing and went straight there. You guys are crazy.
Okay. Yeah?
But so I'm saying, what was the purpose? Now, I get you were saying is because maybe he understood that, but again, and what Matthew said and other people here in the group said, he did a lot of what Jesus used to do, which is send the parables back at them and make them feel guilty or criticized or whatever. But
Yeah.
my first reaction would have skipped the 53 and go straight to
So one of the things that we'll look at in this is, because some scholars debate this issue, is whether or not Stephen actually directly addresses their accusations of him. And I believe he does. And so that's one of the things that we'll talk about next week, is the idea that he does address these accusations. Some of you skipped directly over the first question, but the first question, does anybody remember what are the things he's being accused of? Okay, so blaspheming against God is one of them, and Moses. Okay, what's the other thing? So he's also being accused, or he's being accused under Jesus being accused of saying that he would destroy the temple and also that he would change the law. Okay, so those are three core things that for Jews, you don't blaspheme God. You do not at all look at the temple as anything but God's holy house. And you do not at all look at the law as anything but pure and good and sent and given directly by God for you to follow. And those are the three things that they attack him with. These are the accusations they bring. So that's one of the things that we'll look at next week. Anything else about this passage, Devin?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that he spends like pretty much his whole speech, drawing these parallels, from the history to the Pharisees and how they were like, or the Sanhedrin, I guess, and how they were like the Israelites. But what he doesn't do that I would have expected is, doing, while he's tracing through history, giving the biblical evidence on Jesus' validity. Jesus is very briefly mentioned, in like that last tagline. And I just would have thought that we would have seen more of that.
Okay.
Kind of curious as to why not.
Okay, go ahead,
I
Casey.
actually have a counter to that. I think that he was showing Jesus. So, like, a lot of people say that Jesus fulfills. I think it's that each story that adds up shows God, and then Jesus is God. So it's like, oh, he is the story.
Okay.
So, like, he was showing Jesus because he was just showing it in a different way than maybe we think of, instead of being like, oh, this is exactly how Jesus got here.
Well, we always remember Jesus was pointing people back to the Father and was sent here by the Father to fulfill the Father's will. And so what Stephen is doing in here particularly is trying to show how God's will has gone throughout these things, ending in Jesus. So kind of both of you are looking at it in the right way. Okay. Josh.
Just one of the things that kind of struck me about the passage was it seems he moved past even making any kind of defense for himself and went directly into trying to reach them.
Yeah.
And it was just a mindset of love. There's no self-preservation, no defense. He goes in saying, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I'm reasonable, intelligent. I'm not insane. I'm not possessed, nothing like that. And then goes through, tries to bring them to their senses by going through the law and the history and all that kind of stuff with them. And it's kind of like he starts out like brothers and fathers, so he's beseeching. And the whole thing is just love. Even at the rebuking part of it, it's just he's trying to wake them up.
Yeah, and in that way we can really see Jesus kind of coming out through Stephen in the way that he responds. One of the things we'll talk about next week is this idea that, just like Jesus, when he was hanging on the cross, was, Father, forgive them for what they are doing. Stephen's kind of the same way as they're stoning him. And that's an amazing thing, because that would not be my attitude. One, I'd be trying to run. Go ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, I was going to echo what Josh said, too. I was just looking at verse 51 again. And he says, you stiff-necked people. That line has a lot of history with Israelites.
Yeah.
So he's like not pulling punches, but he's really trying to wake them up.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that's pretty challenging.
And he starts out in a very respectful way. Brothers and fathers. He's acknowledging them as being not just fathers themselves, but fathers of the Jewish people there as they're being called to lead and guide. And so, he finishes up with that very, very pointed. I've talked about these things, and probably at this point you've got some in the audience who are like, yeah, That's exactly what happened with Joseph. That's what happened with David. And you got others who are going, oh, I can see where you're going with this. Yeah, we know where they're going to end up with. This is a great speech, okay? And on some levels, it is a little difficult. So here's what I'm going to do to try to help. And you can accept my help or you can ignore the help. I will try to post on Crossway's Facebook page by Friday evening some passages that will correspond with each of these kind of sections. So if you're not familiar of the story of Joseph, I'll give you a couple of scripture references that kind of give you a quick overview of Joseph in that. And then what I'd really call you to do is read over this speech a couple of times over this next week. It is about, depending on how quickly you read, a 5 to 8 minute read. But as you read over it more and more, you can kind of understand the flow and see the flow of where Stephen is going in this. He is really, again, trying to get them to see, guys, God is continuing to be faithful to you. He is continuing to love us, and He is continuing to point us to be the people He is calling us to be. But yet, every time He sends somebody to us to help us get back on the right track, we kill them, or we reject them, or we beat them, or we do something. But God continues to be faithful, and He continues to call people to us. We keep in mind, because we know these things in history now, but when this happened, you have about another 20 years or so before the temple falls. Okay? And so one of the themes, I don't know if your group picked up on it or not, but one of the themes that comes up through this passage is the idea of the temple and what the temple means. And that they have put all their faith and pride in the fact that we're Jews and God has given us this temple. And the reality is, and I hear the words of John 4 echoing in the back of my head when Jesus is talking with the woman at the well of, you say you worship over here, and we say we worship over here, but there's a time coming when we're just all going to worship God in His way. And very much this speech, Stephen's kind of beginning to echo this to them, that God is not going to be constrained by a building. He's going to be in our hearts, in our lives, and we're going to worship Him all over the place. So that is a lot of stuff to digest for one night. So my email address is very simple, john.kimber71@gmail.com. If you have any questions that come up during your reading this week that you think would be good for me to answer next week, just shoot me an email with that in there. I'll try to address those questions. And probably next week's, I really don't like doing this, but to try to get through everything, I'll probably do it more of kind of a lecture style with probably 15 minutes or so in the end to kind of answer questions and deal with things. So that's what we'll work on. But thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next week. I'll see you Sunday.